We'll call to order the regular meeting of the Halifax Water Board on Thursday, February 27th, 2025, beginning at 9 a.m. We have on our agenda regular reports. So we have approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. I have a motion to be put on the floor.
I'll move.
Go ahead.
I move that the Halifax Water Board approve the order of business and approve additions and deletions to the agenda.
I'll second.
Vice Chair Digo-Gammon has seconded. Any additions or deletions to the agenda as shown? All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. The second item is the approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on January 30th, 2025. I have a motion.
I can do that, Madam Chair. Move that the Halifax Water Board approve the minutes of the January 30th, 2025 regular meeting.
Do I have a seconder? Commissioner Steele has seconded. Any review of the minutes? Any errors or omissions? Okay, none noted. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion on the floor to approve the minutes, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. And I didn't see any business arising from the minutes. Did you, Kenda? No? Okay. Okay, item 4, we have a presentation from staff, the proposed 5-year business strategy 2025-2030 and the annual business plan for 2025-26. And I have a motion to be put on the floor.
Are we going to do the presentation first, Madam Chair, or?
We typically put the motion on the floor and then we do the presentation.
Great, then I'll read this off. Move that the Halifax Water Board 1 approve the 5-year business strategy for 2025-2030, and 2 approve the 2025-26 annual business plan as attached to this report, subject to non-substantive corrections and amendments, and 3 direct the general manager to submit the final 2025-26 annual business plan to Halifax Regional Council for their approval.
Commissioner Cuddle, will you second?
I will second. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cuddle. Over to you, Kenda.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you. I'm going to give you an overview today of our Halifax Water 2030 plan, which is going to be our 5-year strategic plan to get us through the next 5 years, and then followed by what will be year 1, 25-26. So next slide, please, Lorna. So just to recap, and we want to start off just to revisit and make sure everybody's aware and remembers what our purpose is, and it's to supply and safeguard sustainable, high-quality water services. And with that in mind, our vision is that we will provide our customers with high-quality water, wastewater, and stormwater services. Through the adoption of best practices, we will place the highest value on public health, customer service, fiscal responsibility, workplace safety, asset management, regulatory compliance, and stewardship of the environment. In doing all of this, we will fully engage our employees through teamwork, innovation, and professional development. So as we go through the following slides, we just want to make sure that we're building off of that purpose and that vision as we plan our years ahead. Okay, so looking at our current situation, the plan going forward for 25-26 that we've incorporated into our 5-year strategic plan, and as you look at what our plan to get us to 2030 is going to be focused on, we're going to be looking at empowering our people through leadership and accountability, focusing on operational resiliency. We have a commitment, as always, to safety in the workplace and around our city for our customers as well as our employees. We'll be looking at risk mitigation, organizational capacity, and capital delivery. our ability and continued need and focus on meeting regulatory obligations, maintaining our focus on our strategic initiatives, and improving the organization's financial position. Next slide. Again, as we transitioned a few years ago, our focus is on our 4 pillars, and those being people, environment, health and safety, and social responsibility, financial and regulatory accountability, and operational effectiveness. For the pillar relating to our people, our employees are a key to our success, and we are committed to attracting and retaining a high-quality team. With respect to environment, health, safety, and social responsibility, safety in the workplace is a key pillar to our everyday activities, and we also remain focused on the impact that we have on our environment and our community, ensuring that our services are reliable and sustainable. Respecting financial regulatory accountability, it is vital that Halifax Water can fund our future infrastructure needs, making sure our operations and asset renewal programs encompass the principle of intergenerational equity. Under operational effectiveness, this pillar focuses on efficiencies of our day-to-day operations and the oversight needed and the delivery of our critical services to our customers. Next slide, please. In looking at our plan for the next 5 years, we did a SWOT analysis, and there's some details that are embedded in the report. But looking at our strengths, one of our key strengths that we take great pride on is our committed employees and our board members. And another great strength, we have a new executive with new perspective to lead us through the next 5 years and onward. When we looked at some of the weaknesses that we have, being able to keep pace with the change in growth, aging infrastructure, our service interruptions have been impacting customer trust. And we also have been experiencing increased approval times for our capital. And we also have to look at the need to increase employee engagement. Looking at the opportunities that we have in front of us, we can build off the commitment of our employees and increase engagement and resiliency. Building off our new leadership team, we can focus on redefining our leadership, setting expectations and accountability for all of our staff, enhancing our process to improve approval times, increase engagement with our customers to demonstrate the value for the service and rebuild their trust. Looking at threats that may be in front of us for the next 5 years, our aging infrastructure and the growth pressures and the changes in our regulatory requirements that will be placed on that infrastructure. We'll have to adjust our rates to reflect our needs while being mindful of the affordability to our customers. So in keeping those things in mind, we started to look at how do we deliver our next 5-year plan. And next slide, please. So we stepped back and we looked at how do we do this integrated approach to get to 2030? What information do we have and need in order to inform it? And so we'll be recently received approval to commence our next integrated resource plan and updating the 2019 integrated resource plan on infrastructure needs, taking those needs, transitioning those into our financial requirements, and building off the engagement of our employees and our customers and looking at our operational requirements going forward. So that's what's informing all of the information and the business plan that you're going to see shortly. In our business strategy, we have the outlines for our objectives, looking at our operation budget, our capital budget, and other things such as regional development charge and our revenue requirements. Taking those, we start to map out what our fiscal requirements are for the next 5 years. And then that then becomes and defines what our business plans are going to be, and then looking at how that impacts and defines what we need to incorporate into our 4 pillars going forward. Next slide, please. So in the development of our 5-year plan, we focused on the strategic goals for each pillar. And we mapped out the activities that we need to achieve those by 2030. Further in the slide, you'll see the deliverables that are specific for year one in 25-26. But we also took the time in developing, while developing year one, looking outward to the years and building the comprehensive approach for the utility to make sure that we're set up for success in achieving those goals for 2030. Next slide, please. So when we look at our people, the objective over the next 5 years is to create a thriving and inclusive workplace culture by fostering strong relationships and collaborative talent management and enhancing every step of our employees' career journey through and together over the next 5 years. As we get into some of the details of that, there's 4 things that we'll be focusing on over the next 5 years, which relating to people, would to focus on building a psychologically safe and engaged workplace culture that attracts, develops, and retains talent. We want to implement effective leadership framework that defines and guides all employees for Halifax Water. We need to execute a talent management strategy through collaborative partnerships with organizational leaders and enhance employee experience by improving employee engagement throughout the duration of an employee's career at Halifax Water. Next slide, please. For environment, health, safety, and social responsibility, as we go through to 2030, the objective will be to establish a disciplined processes and effectively manage our risks to create a safer, more resilient future for our water and resources and community. Implement an emergency management program that ensures business continuity to safeguard water supply, public health, and the environment. We will launch sustainability programs that recognize climate impacts and address the long-term viability of water resources, infrastructure, and environmental impacts. We'll increase customer compliance through education and enforcement of the appropriate use of water, wastewater, and stormwater systems that they receive service through. Under financial regulatory accountability, the objective is to enhance our internal processes for regulatory oversight, financial management, and corporate governance. In order to deliver that, the strategic initiatives we'll be focused on will be the delivery of the next integrated resource plan, and it will inform the organization's next 5-year strategy, future annual plans, and the long-term financial framework for operating and capital requirements. We'll implement an enhanced project management framework to effectively plan and deliver projects. Adopt more effective internal processes and tools to support regulatory oversight, and adapt organizational processes to enhance financial management, accountability, and corporate governance. Next slide. Under operational effectiveness, the overall objective for the next 5 years is to improve the customer experience and build trust and confidence by focusing on service reliability. In doing this, the strategic initiatives will be to make prudent investments and improve system resilience and reliability, create a disciplined culture of accountability, continuous improvement, and risk mitigation, improve and support our relationships with our customers, and enhance our organizational decision-making processes to deliver more financially prudent and effective services. So that provides an overview of our 5-year strategic plan. I defer to the board if you want to take any questions on the 5-year plan, or we can go into the 25-26 business plan.
Yeah, let's pause there for a minute, Kenda, and see if there's any questions from the commissioners on the strategic plan. Go ahead, Commissioner Cuddle.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just had a question about how we categorize things. So when I look under environment, health, safety, and social responsibility, the first bullet is to strengthen our safety culture and ensure a safe working environment for all employees. And I would think that that would fit under people, where people is focused on safe workplace culture, employees. For me, that is more about people than it is about environment. And I'm just wondering, we have the environment, health and safety and social responsibility kind of is our bucket for looking at things related to environment. And I worry that is perhaps some of those things are too broad, and I would wonder if some of those items belong in or more aligned with a different bucket.
Right. And so that's a very good question. And when we look at the people aspect of it, it's focusing on the growth of our workforce, making sure that they have the training and the tools to do their day-to-day jobs, the right processes in place, that they're working in respectful workplaces, and it's more in tune with some of the programs and deliverables from people and culture, and making sure that they have a good workplace to come to every day and grow and contribute. When we look at the safety aspect, and we're grouping that with environment, health, and safety, it's looking at the day-to-day delivery of making sure that we have the safe work practices in place for them to deliver that work. And I think it may come through a bit deeper as we go into some of the deliverables for the 25-26, where we're starting to look at integrated management systems and bringing in under basically an umbrella of delivery of safe work practices, and integrating those into environmental compliance, and making sure that we have all of those in place and supporting each other. But it's kind of carving off the actual safe programs that we need, the safety program that we need, and we've kind of grouped those all together from the environment, health, and safety.
So I know you can slice and dice this many
Right.
different ways, but I see a strong correlation between workplace culture and workplace safety, and
Yes.
that one really informs the other. And so carving them up like that, particularly when we look at the work within our subcommittees and how we holistically view these different pieces, I just feel that belongs in the other bucket, and that there's not a bucket that is strongly focused on the kind of environment and environmental health.
Right.
And that being one of our, if I go back, one of our pillars of looking at kind of this integrated system, and making changes at Halifax Water around environmental practice and stewardship. Those are my comments, Kenda, and I
Right.
and I know, and I'll continue to listen, but I think that line more relates to workplace culture.
There's right. There are the environmental health, and then there are actually the physical health and safety piece of the employees. And so I think we might touch back further on that, and maybe have a bit more conversation as we go through the 1-year plan and start talking about some of these integrated systems and how those all kind of correlate. But you are right that one of the aspects of providing a good improving the workplace culture is employees need to know that they're safe when they come to work, and that the tasks that are in front of them, that they're mapped out and they're delivered safely. And so that provides that reassurance to staff, and makes a good working environment as well, that they have those programs in place. So,
Commissioner Purdy?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for this. My question is just about capacity and under the weaknesses, not being able to keep pace. And I'm just wondering, what role does Halifax Water play in the housing panel that the province has set up, and also in the Stantec future services studies, because that's informing where big development that's previously not there, we don't have the services to the infrastructure to support it. So are you on the back end of that, the front end of that? Like, where does Halifax Water fit into these big decisions that are being made? And yeah, and are they aware of the capacity constraints? I mean,
Right. No. Yeah. Oh, great question. Yes. So there's multiple touch points for us on that infrastructure need and the ability to deliver and infrastructure in time for the growth. We have, as I noted, our integrated resource plan recently was approved. For the third update, and when we've done the past integrated resource plans 2012, 2019, those were aligned with HRM's regional plan. And we have very dedicated strategic working groups with HRM to see where is the growth going? When do you think the growth is going to be there? In order for us to start mapping out and planning when certain infrastructure components need to be in place. And since then, with the team, the province and HRM is bringing us into those conversations when needed and when we're talking about infrastructure needs. And so we're revisiting and working strongly and closely with HRM's regional planning team on what are the updated current growth needs going forward. And so we are on the steering committee for the future servicing strategy committee, the Stantec report that's underway. So we're participating in those conversations and reviews of that plan and providing input into what some of our infrastructure constraints, timings, issues might be to ensure that it's informing that project and that program and being able to react and plan for when do we need to have certain pipes in the ground, when do we need to do under certain upgrades. And then going into how do we fund that, that is where the regional development charge comes into play. So we have a funding strategy in place to look at some of these big infrastructure needs as we go forward.
We are calling today as your delivery may be affected by the recent weather which has made delivery.
Mr. Cuddle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and so to that point, it was another comment I had around the weaknesses and the threats. And I know, in here we note, the lengthy approval process, affordability, aging infrastructure, and the need for significant investment. But I almost feel like we're at a point where we really need to call out like funding. Like right now, the affordability piece, and I'm assuming you're talking about affordability as it relates to ratepayers.
Correct.
Right. So I would actually say that affordability to ratepayers, like let's be specific, and as well, there's some serious questions right now around municipal infrastructure funding. It's uncertain. So even putting something in there about the uncertainty of external funding sources, because what we're talking about can't be funded by the ratepayers solely. Like it's not possible. And, these are conversations that are happening at the provincial level. They're happening at the federal level. And I think, we can't candy coat that. I think we need to be quite specific that we can't deliver if we don't have external funding partners.
Right. No, and those are good points, and we can adjust the wording on that those bullets to kind of reflect that a bit more directly. We have been having recent conversations on some of the funding programs that are available. Currently, right now, they're more focused on some of the growth, but it would also support some of the infrastructure needs that we have. And we're exploring any opportunity that we can to look for some external funding partnerships with the current programs coming from the federal government. And it's just making sure that they align with the criteria that they're looking at. So those conversations are happening, but it is something that we would like to pursue and elevate a bit more.
Right. It's a serious vulnerability for us to be able to deliver the programming.
Yes.
And I think some of your comments to Commissioner Cuddle will show up in the annual plan, since it's an ever-changing world at the moment. So it may be more of a year by year as we see how that develops. Okay, seeing no other questions, part of why I wanted to pause was to acknowledge all the hard work that goes into the 5-year plan. Some of the commissioners have had the opportunity to be on the Board of Commissioners and witness most of the last 5-year plan. So we know that we're very excited at the culmination of this 5-year strategic plan, and Halifax Water 2030 is going to be a great foundation for the organization to continue to deliver our high quality services, especially with the ever-changing challenges of climate change and economic pressures. So the board wanted to thank you, Kenda, and the entire team on putting together that 5-year strategic plan.
Yes, and thank you for, and I do want to echo those that the executive team spent a number of hours with a lot of long, hard conversations and making sure that we're setting the right program to deliver the 5-year plan. And as you'll see in the next presentation, starting to lay the groundwork and the framework to get us off on the right foot. So there's a lot of heavy lifting ahead of us, but everybody is pretty excited and looking forward to some of these new challenges in front of us to deliver that and make us well placed for 2030.
Thank you, Kenda. Commissioner O'Toole, do you have a comment before we go to the annual plan?
Yes, I know that we're working with Halifax Water to get them scheduled to come present the annual business plan to council. I believe you'll also be presenting an overview of the 5-year business plan. I just wanted to make sure that this board was aware of that, and there'll be a high level of interest for sure at council. When it happens, we will arrange to do it as a committee of the whole, I think, so that there's not any constraint in terms of the ability for our council to ask questions. I think it's important for them to be very well informed on what's going on with Halifax Water and the projection for the next 5 years. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Toole. Moving on, the 25-26 annual business plan. Kenda, back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as I mentioned, we're starting to map out what the next 5 years are going to be. The presentation that you're about to see is focusing in on some of the details of the actual programs and the goals that we're going to set for ourselves for this year, and work with our teams to deliver to try and achieve those 5-year strategic bullets that we just reviewed under each of the different pillars. So if we can go to the next slide, Lorna, we'll jump into the people. And looking at the first one, in order to build our psychologically safe and engaged workplace culture, we're going to be launching the Psychologically Health and Safety 3-year strategic plan by Q1. We'll be renewing and looking in greater depth on our diversity, equity, and inclusion plan by Q2. Develop the strategic recruitment and attraction plan by Q4. I think we're no different than a number of organizations right now on trying to make sure that we're thinking outside the box from a recruitment standpoint and getting all the great people working for us, and then also making sure that the people that are here are happy in staying here and making sure that they feel engaged and valued and continue in their career here. We're going to be looking at enhancing our training and developing plan and looking at building a Halifax Water Learning Academy by Q4. Next slide, please. Focusing in on some of the leadership framework and making sure that it defines and guides all of the employees at Halifax Water. We want to develop and launch the leadership accountability framework by Q3. Create a communication and change plan to roll out to leadership behaviors to the organization by Q3, as well as define the leadership objectives and expectations by Q4 once we started to build that framework. And everybody has the opportunity and can be a leader in their respective roles and jobs that they undertake within the organization. Next slide, thank you. As we look to execute the talent management strategy and through collaborative partnerships with the organizational leaders, we're going to be looking by Q2 to launch our succession planning framework and focusing in on some critical roles and skills. We do have an aging workforce, similar to a lot of other organizations, and we have to be prepared and ready for some of the employees that will be looking at the next journey in their life and retiring, and making sure we're well placed for that. By Q3, fully integrate the succession planning discussions into our business units. Looking at high potential talent pathways for our staff by Q3. Launch a talent assessment process by Q3 and incorporate annual talent review processes by Q4. Next slide, please. As we look at enhancing the employee experience by improving some of the touch points throughout the career, we want to increase the annual employee survey participation rate by the end of Q4. We want to establish an employee engagement council to help develop accountability and empowerment within the organization by the end of Q1. And that process has started already, but we want to make sure it's formalized and well in place by the end of Q1. And then we want to take and incorporate the outputs of the council's feedback and the employee feedback from the last survey and recommendations, and start to develop and map out an action plan by the end of Q2. Next slide. When we start looking at our environment, health and safety and social responsibility pillar, strengthening our safety culture to ensure a safe working environment for all employees. In order to deliver these, we want to complete a review of our existing occupational health and safety manual and develop a gap closure plan to meet regulatory and current practices by the end of Q3. We want to complete our fire safety plans for all of our Halifax Water facilities by Q4. Develop a framework for the Halifax Water security plan by the end of Q4. As well, complete and operationalize the first iteration of a comprehensive organizational electrical safety program by Q4. We want to improve the quality of incident reporting, investigation, root cause analysis, corrective and prevention action processes, and verification closure processes by the end of Q4. And develop an action plan to reduce at-fault motor vehicle accidents by the end of Q3. Next slide, please. The next strategic initiative under this pillar is to implement the emergency management program that ensures business continuity to safeguard water supply, public health, and the environment. By the end of Q4, we want to complete the 3-phase emergency management project to include benchmarking of the current state of Halifax Water's emergency management program compared to best practices. Secondly, develop a strategic plan for the comprehensive emergency management program, and formalize an action plan for the emergency management program to meet emergency management accreditation program requirements, as well as establish training and emergency response exercise plan by the end of Q4. Next slide. The next strategic initiative here is to launch sustainability programs that recognize climate impacts and address the long-term viability of water resources, infrastructure, and environmental impacts. Here, we're going to develop an action plan for determining the safe yield for all water supplies, in support of integrated resource plan for future water withdrawal approval requirements by the end of Q4. Building on existing methodologies, we want to develop a multi-year strategy to reduce the amount of water produced but not billed, known as water loss, by the end of Q4. Next slide. We want to as well increase compliance through education, customer compliance through education enforcement of the appropriate use of water, wastewater, and stormwater systems where they receive services. In doing this, we are looking to review the programs for opportunities to increase customer education and awareness by Q4, conduct engagement with interested parties specific to the proposed new service account compliance program by the end of Q4. As well, define the scope and requirements for software tools to support customer compliance with pollution prevention programs by the end of Q4, and complete an industry scan of customer programs with other utilities to reduce private side inflow and infiltration by the end of Q4. Moving on to our financial and regulatory compliance. The first strategic initiative there is to deliver the next IRP that will inform the organization's next 5-year strategy, future annual plans, and long-term financial framework for operating and capital requirements. To do this, we want to obtain the approval and launch the IRP update project to the organization by the end of Q1. As I noted, we recently received the approval last week to start that project, and so we'll be taking the next steps to launch that and get that off the ground with both the consultant and our employees, making sure everybody's aware of what's going on. We want to develop the engagement and communications plans, including identification of feedback and engagement sessions with staff, to be delivered over the life of the project by the end of Q2. And work with HRM to confirm population projections by the end of Q3, making sure, going to the questions earlier, that we are delivering the infrastructure needs for the next 30 years based on the best available data on population projections. And those conversations and engagements are well underway and have been going on for a number of months previous to this. Next slide. The next thing is implement an enhanced project management framework to effectively plan and deliver projects. We're going to complete the first phase of engineering processes project, the EPP target state, focusing on financial reporting and scheduling by the end of Q2. Establish the level of organizational oversight for all capital projects by the end of Q4. Next slide. In order to look at the next 5 years to adopt the effective internal processes and tools to support regulatory oversight, obtain regulatory approval, and launch the IRP update project to the organization by the end of Q1. Identify internal regulatory process gaps by the end of Q3, and create a process framework for addressing identified regulatory gaps by the end of Q4. And the last driver under financial and regulatory compliance, we want to adapt organizational processes to enhance financial management, accountability, and corporate governance. Obtain regulatory approval and launch the IRP update project by the end of Q1. In order to do that, we need to establish processes to regularly update infrastructure projects in the long-term financial model by the end of Q1. Support regulatory approval to establish rates that fund the operating and capital requirement by the end of Q1. Support the regional development charges application to fund the capital requirements for the growth by the end of Q3. And those two bullets are going to be focusing on some near-term submissions to the Utility Review Board and supporting basically the general rate application and the RDC applications as they move forward through to the UARB. We need to outline the impact of the rate increases and review options to make rates more affordable for lower income customers by the end of Q2. Develop the Energy Center concept design and establish a plan for rate design for district energy systems by the end of Q4. And work with Halifax Water Board, identify key financial controls and confirm that all are operating effectively by the end of Q3, and work with the Halifax Water Board to review corporate governance and oversight by the end of Q4. Next slide. Moving into operational effectiveness, make prudent investments to improve resiliency and reliability. To achieve this in 25-26, we're going to start that journey and formalize an operational water supply resiliency plan for the 5 to 10 year horizon by the end of Q4. This plan should include addressing near-term corrective measures that have been identified in accordance with timelines outlined in the recent Boyle advisory reports. Develop a plan to address water quality, quantity, and system redundancy within the distribution system by the end of Q4, and develop a project delivery strategy for the water supply enhancement project by the end of Q4, as well as seek approval for a capital investment and upgrade for an upgraded biosolids processing facility by the end of Q4. Next strategic driver under operational effectiveness is to create a disciplined culture of accountability, continuous improvement, and risk mitigation. In doing this, we'll establish an integrated management system committee by the end of Q1, develop our integrated management system roadmap by the end of Q4, and develop a structure that aligns all risks to a single register for the organization by the end of Q3. The next driver for our 5-year target is to improve and support relationships with customers. Here, we'll be looking at this year to implement new bill design and launch, including communication of changes and benefits to customers by the end of Q2. Review options to promote the use of online services by the end of Q3. Estimate net savings of the increasing the number of customers using online services by the end of Q3. Map process flow for stormwater inquiries and appeals, establish customer service levels, and develop a plan to implement efficiencies by the end of Q3. We want to implement a process to address the backlog of stormwater inquiries and appeals by the end of Q4, and complete the develop or complete the final draft of the integrated stormwater management policy with HRM by the end of Q4. And under the last strategic initiative for 5 years under operational effectiveness, we're going to enhance the organizational decision-making processes to deliver more financially prudent and effective services. Review, and in doing that this year, we're going to start by reviewing and updating the strategy for document management by the end of Q4. Review the existing data analytics program to ensure the focus on key priorities by the end of Q2. Establish clear go-forward strategy and implementation plan for data analytics by the end of Q3. Complete the review of the existing operational structure for water, wastewater, and stormwater, and prepare for an options analysis and implementation plan by Q3. And begin implementing the plan by the end of Q4 in advance of the Burnside Operations Center coming online. And finally, develop a strategy to align with municipal development intensification and the mid to long-term impacts on infrastructure by the end of Q3. So there's a long list of things that we have in front of us, and we can take questions on any of those. The full executive team is here, and if you have any detailed inquiries on any of those points, we can jump in and try and address those.
Commissioner McPherson, you're up first.
Great, thank you, and thanks, Kendra. As you're saying, there's lots there, and lots to talk about. I just have a couple, one comment, I guess, and one question. And the comment is in regard to alignment of operational structures. And I think it would be helpful, and this may already be done, but to have a way for input for the frontline folks to provide their input into what's working, what isn't working. And I don't know if that's the new committee or if it's some other manner, but quite often the guys and gals in the trucks are the people who can give you some pretty good ideas about maybe operationally how you can change things. The question I had was with the integrated management system, and I don't want to do too deep a dive, but if we can get a little more detail on how that is envisaged to work, that would be helpful to me.
Okay, great. I do want to highlight to the point about getting input from some of the frontline workers. As we were mapping out some of the functionality of the new Burnside Operations Center, that involved a lot of input from our operational teams on some of the things that work well, some of the things that we need to look at better. And John Eisner is going to be taking that to the next level of not just the physical aspects of a building and what works and doesn't work, but looking at some of the integration between the different teams from the delivery of that. So there's a lot more of that happening, and there's more to come on that, but that is a very valid point. And Wendy Kokozik is here as well. She's going to be leading the integrated management system, but that is where we start looking at the synergies and relationships between our enterprise risk management program, our emergency management programs, safety and security, and I'm missing one, Wendy, but our environmental management system, I think, as well, and starting to see the relationships on how those integrate together and trying to come up with that overarching integrated management system. We've over the years advanced and developed a really formalized, structured environmental management system, and we have accreditation in our facilities for that. But we want to build on those successes and start bringing other programs into that that framework. And Wendy, if there's anything else you want to add to that, turn the floor over.
Sure. Yeah, I think you covered it in general, but we have many, I would say, risk-based ISO type programs. Kenda mentioned a few. We also have source water protection, asset management, drinking water safety, and there's similar components to all of those programs. So this is a way to bring them all together, create consistency across the organization, and create the risk-based risk mitigation culture across the organization, and to streamline incident reporting and investigation, and so that we can then have risk-based decision making that informs capital budgets and operational work that happens across the utility as well.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Kenda. And I assume the overarching intent is to make it a little simpler for everyone.
Yes, and it's interesting. I just want to. We started to introduce some of the similar type methodologies and structure into the safety program a couple of years ago. And we had one of those moments where somebody that was entrenched in the environmental system structure from an ISO perspective, they started to see the relationship. And they said, this is, when we did it for safety, they said, this is just like the EMS. And so once staff start to see those similarities, it starts to become a lot easier, and people build off of what they know and they feel comfortable with that. So it's pretty exciting when you see those light bulb moments and the correlations happening between the systems.
That's great. Thanks.
Commissioner Steele?
Thank you, Kenda, for the presentation. I have mostly questions. My questions relate to your people strategy, and I see you have a lot of aspects to that in your business plan. You mentioned a talent review process by Q3, and I'm wondering who that will cover. Will it be all your employees, your senior management? And then there's a part B to that question is, once you do that talent review process and place people on perhaps the talent map, for example, is that communicated back to employees on where they land, because I know in our federal system that I worked in for a long time, sometimes that information wasn't clearly communicated back, and people might have left the organization if they didn't feel they were progressing, for example. So that's the genesis of that. And then I have another people question and a quick one on your customer compliance work.
Right. Ashley Kendall is on the call, and I think I might defer the question on the talent mapping and strategy to her. But
yeah, thank you. I'd be happy to jump in. So thanks for your question. I think part A, when we're thinking about talent reviews, to your point, it actually needs to start at a baseline of leadership roles somewhere and/or critical positions. However, the intent would be over time to ensure that we're reviewing all of our non-union employees in some way, shape, or form through that process. So starting off, with the bite-sized pieces and building it into what we need it to be. So hopefully that helps answer that question. And then the second part is around the notification. So my recommendation to this organization is that we move towards a more transparent culture when it comes to talent.
Yes.
And what better way to motivate and engage and retain, the people that we need to through those conversations and helping them identify what their career pathing opportunities look like, et cetera, and what their potential is. That's always important to talk about.
Okay, thank you. No, very interesting. I agree with that strategy of the more transparency and supporting people by identifying those skills and competencies that perhaps they need to develop to help them move along the talent map to the ideal spot on the grid. Okay, what is your participation rate in your employee survey? I'm just curious because often that speaks to engagement.
Yeah, good question. So this latest one, we're 63%. So a slight 1% increase from the prior year. And the other thing that we look at too in terms of participation rate, that's really important, but what is our overall rating? So those two things kind of come hand in hand. And more to come on that because we're just digging into the data and the results now. So we'll have a full preview soon.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And my final question is just more, you mentioned in your 5-year strategic review as well as the business plan, and I thought you would delve a bit deeper in the business plan part. Your customer compliance work, education, wastewater, stormwater, how important is that to your bottom line, I guess? What difference could it potentially make?
Right. And that's a great question. And we want to focus in ideally is on the education piece. And customer compliance to our regulations can be multifaceted. It can be anything from an internal cross connection whereby some of a customer's wastewater system is going into the stormwater system. And that can create an environmental issue that we have to work with the customer to resolve. And we want to make sure we have that solid foundation for all of our programs from an education perspective on the importance and how customers can have an impact and positive impact on systems. And then ultimately, if we have to go down the enforcement route, we will, but we want to focus on trying to get that education piece. And we want to also enhance awareness and understanding of their impact from the inflow and infiltration perspective. And so those situations could be somebody has a sump pump, and because they have private drainage issues or don't have a viable solution for them to discharge their stormwater or manage their stormwater on their property or through a storm system, they may connect that sump pump to the wastewater system, and that can cause compliance issues for us. And so we want to make sure that that people are aware of those impacts. Also, the customer compliance piece is also related to potentially fat, oil, and grease, and making sure what you put in down your drain, it doesn't clog your pipes and cause a backup in your system, but also ultimately doesn't cause a backup in our systems. We need to figure out, and working closely with the Canadian Water Water and Wastewater Association of Canada on marketing and strategies on education related to flushable wipes. They are not flushable. So despite what the package says, and so we have to figure out how do we get that message out to the community so that people understand that putting those down the toilet, that could, again, impact their system and cause a backup, but also could clog up our pumps downstream and our pipes downstream. So it's trying to target a number of these different initiatives and making sure how do we effectively get that message out so that people are informed on how they can impact from a compliance perspective, and building off some good work that other utilities are doing, and how do we make that better.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Diego Gammon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kenda, for the presentation and the information. It's so obvious the amount of work that has gone into this, and from seeing it from the ward when we workshop this to being in meetings and then to see the final product is pretty cool. And so my question, it gets built a little bit on Commissioner Steele's, to be honest, but one of the things I'm wondering about is, in the report itself, it is so well structured, the strategy, the goals, then it's got the rationale, and then it's got the impact, right? So excellent information that I think our ratepayers need to see. So my question goes to, will this be prominently found on Halifax Water's website so that anybody can easily go and they're
Right.
going to see this is, the business strategy, this is the plan that matches it. And I love our presentations. And then I think, the presentations are really the high level, and, the stuff like the impact of all of these, I think, is what is so important to our ratepayers too. So I guess I'm just wondering how we're going to make sure that that's very public and available and transparent, because it's a really good piece of work. And, we're just hip deep in reading budgets at
Right.
HRM, and I was a little bit worried about reading all of this at the same time. And I thought, is my brain going to handle all of this? But it was really nice to see the synergy between what is happening at Halifax Water, what's happening at HRM, that, there's really good collaborative work here. So thank you. That's my question.
Okay, no, and those are great points. Yeah, and part of there's been a real focus the last couple of years on making sure that what we're doing is aligning and making sure that our customers are well served, and the processes are well placed, but also looking to the municipality. We have an obligation to make sure that the residents of the municipality are well served, and so there's a lot of deep look and focus on making sure there's alignment there. As Commissioner O'Toole mentioned, we will be going to council as well to present this, and making sure that the understanding of what our business plan is and what our goals are informed and put out there. We do have all of our documents are available on our website, but I think to where you're going is how can we make that splash page when it first comes out, so that people have that quick link. And that's certainly something that I think we can look to, of how do we make sure that all the hard work that has gone into this plan and trying to track the progress and making sure we're set up for success, how that is communicated back to our customers and how they can easily see that. And so we'll be looking at opportunities to share some of this information on social media platforms and different methodologies to get that out there. So, but that's definitely something that's something we want to do, because fundamentally too, we want to make sure that people understand a bit better what are they getting for their rates, and how does that benefit them. So
awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Cuddle. Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. I'm used to my old computer was a touch screen. Now I have to wiggle my mouse over there. Okay, so there's a lot in this plan. There's a lot of plans in the plan. And so it's very ambitious. I think a lot of these things are critical pieces that we've been identifying along the way, work that needs to be done. So I'm kind of, seeing all this, I feel encouraged that there's a bit of a reset. This isn't just a regurgitation of another plan. It's really kind of looking at our current situation and where we need to go. I'm curious to see if it's all doable within, the time frame that's given here, because it's like I said, it's very ambitious. So I'm wondering, like some of the other councillors have noted, about how not just how it gets communicated out publicly, but how it's going to come back to the board. And I know we have the impact statements and the rationale, but it's like, how across this broad range of initiatives are we going to measure the impact and the KPIs? Like the impact statements are rather broad right now, and it's so how are we honing in specifically on making sure that we're having the impact where the impact needs to be to truly address some of the issues that we're setting out to address. Right. So I think the ongoing reporting for us is going to be important too. But I'm still not convinced that the strength in our safety culture belongs in environment, health, and safety. I see the other things in there about public health, about our regulatory, making sure we're delivering, good quality water, emergency management, those things. And that first bullet for me is still about empowering employees. Of course, employees have a role, but one is about the deliverables around health and safety, and one is around the deliverables of employee work culture, empowering employees, educating employees, training employees, reducing accidents. That's anyway. So I'm not. I was waiting for this part to see if my mind changed, and my mind's not changed on that. So appreciate that. But back to how the kind of the KPIs, and there's a lot of jargon in here. Just for a layperson, like Kathy, you said, we need to kind of socialize this. I think for a layperson, we're intimate with it because we've been through these workshops and we've been on the board for a while. But to a layperson looking at some of these things, they're going to be like, what does that mean in terms of nuts and bolts?
Right. And so those are all great points. And yes, it is an ambitious plan, and it had more in it. And so we kind of right-sized it, reflecting very hard on our institutional capacity and our staffing resources in order to try and make sure that we had something that we could successfully deliver. In some cases, these programs are already established, and we just have to look at refining them, documenting them, setting up what the metrics are to make sure that we're measuring things properly. Going to the line of sight that you, the board, and the public are going to use to make sure that we're achieving these. We are proposing that these become basically a dashboard that we have updates on. How are we doing? How are we tracking on delivering a new policy or a new program? Where are we on the rollouts? Also, some of the activities that are going to be in there, you'll start to see the improvements in the scores from anything from in participation of employees in employee surveys and scores from the employee survey and the results that we see, to some of the KPIs that we set for our safety targets in our corporate balance scorecard. And so we're going to try and take everything here and try and put it into something that is measurable and understandable also to the employee group, so that they understand ultimately, how do I inform some of these initiatives? How do I have touch points into this? How do I fit into this plan? And so once we have an approved plan, we'll be going out to our depots to review this with everybody in April, so that they have kind of that line of sight into how do they inform and complement the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So we will be more mindful on having measurable goals and targets for us going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kenda. And to echo Vice Chair Deagle-Gammon's comments, the board really appreciates the details of the 25-26 annual business plan as the first year of Halifax Water 2030. It's really paramount for the Board of Commissioners, our customers, and the communities to see our path forward. So we're excited, but we also want to take a moment and appreciate the hard work by the team. So please pass along our thanks to the entire team.
Yeah, we'll do, and thank you. There's been a lot of hard work going to get to where we are, and very proud of the team that we have and their dedication and commitment to getting us to this point. So yeah, there's a lot of work, but I'm pretty excited that everybody's motivated and going in the right direction. And thank you for your support, because you've given us lots of feedback through our workshops and some of the initiatives that we want to deliver on.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we have a motion on the floor. Thank you, Lorna. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion has carried. Well done. Thank you, everyone. Item 5, Windsor Street Exchange redevelopment project. I have a motion to be put on the floor.
I can.
Go ahead, Commissioner Steele.
I move that the Halifax Water Board approve the Windsor Street Exchange redevelopment project for a total project cost of $69,275,000 and submission to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board, subject to Halifax Regional Council approval.
Second.
Vice Chair Deagle-Gammon is seconded. I think over to you, Josh.
Yes, excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Today we're going to, I've got staff with me to walk through the Halifax Water portion of the Windsor Street Exchange project. It has been a popular item as of late, and excuse me, we're bringing the this capital approval to our Halifax Water Board today, as you see in the motion there, to get the application in front of the UARB as soon as possible and help us working through that process to make sure that we're demonstrating coordination with HRM as best as possible as we can on this significant project. So I've got Jonathan McDonald here, I believe, is on the call as well. Excuse me. He is our manager in our infrastructure planning group on the water side, and he currently has the lead on this project from Halifax Water's perspective, and has been heavily engaged with HRM throughout the process over the last months to years, really. So Jonathan's going to walk us through this, and then if there's any questions, we can have that conversation following the presentation.
Welcome, Jonathan.
Perfect. Thank you, Josh, and thank you for the opportunity to present and give some more information on this project. So next slide, please. So just a little bit of background. The Windsor Street Exchange redevelopment project, I know that's just a small picture of the overall area. It's a little bit more than that. But HRM has been working to approve elements of the Windsor Street Exchange, including traffic flow, truck traffic, transit traffic, and pedestrian and other modes of transportation through the entire corridor. And on the same note, Halifax Water has infrastructure within the project limits of the Windsor Street Exchange, and these projects were also identified in our integrated resources plan that they're kind of a high priority for us to complete, and list is at the bottom there. So the two of them that we were looking at is the north end feeder replacement. That is the water main, transmission main that travels kind of through the project area. It's mostly in a tunnel that's anywhere from 50 to 100 feet underground. It kind of comes from like the Bedford Highway area up through and kind of comes up through another shaft at Commission Street. So that's one piece of infrastructure that the IRP identified that, since due to its high risk nature, if it ever was to fail, it's very complicated to replace it or fix it or and do anything with it. So they recommended, the IRP recommended that we twin that high risk portion through the Windsor Street Exchange. That way, if there is a break on that existing pipe, we can switch over or ultimately abandon that one in the tunnel and go with a more reliable, less deep transmission main. The other project is the Yonge Street Pocket sewer separation. That one is in the Yonge Street Pocket area, so that's the Yonge, Roby, Almond, Windsor pocket, where there's a lot of growth that the IRP identified in the next 25 years. So part of the strategy to accommodate that growth is to separate the sewer in that pocket, because it's a combined system right now, and the outflow for that new separated stormwater would be Kempt Road, which ultimately would end up going through the Windsor Street Exchange and connect to existing stormwater infrastructure at the bottom of Bain Street, just kind of on the border of the port, on the Portlands. And the last piece, we take the opportunity, since there is such a large area that HRM are going to be working on, there's a number of improvements we can do to the water, wastewater, and stormwater system. So it's not just for these two projects that we're looking to spend that 69 million. It's kind of an all-encompassing. We're looking at some of the assets in that area that just need to be fixed, and we're just taking the opportunity. If you're digging up the road, now is a good time to do that. So next slide, please. So just to give a little bit of an update since the last time we spoke, which would have been in the fall of last year. So since then, the design has started. We've been working closely with HRM and their design build team to do a 30% design review. That was submitted, I would say, late January, and we were in the process of just confirming our design requirements, making sure they understand the project scope, and just in what they're going to be designing the new systems to. There is additional design packages at 60%. That's the next kind of deliverable stage. We were anticipating to get those in March, but likely that's going to slide to May 2025, since that work was put on hold in the late January. But some of the work that they have done in the last few months was a lot of as-built collection, topographical survey. They did a lot of CCTV wastewater and on the wastewater and stormwater side, and they did a fairly extensive geotechnical investigation where they did a number of test pits and boreholes to do soil samples, figure out how deep rock is, test and do environmental testing to see if there's contaminated soil or anything that they would need to deal with that would help that would kind of help inform the scope of our work. So as everybody knows, the HRM Council decided on the 28th to not proceed, but that was subsequently approved this week with a different kind of look at the project and a little bit of an expanded scope on Tuesday. So we're currently now working with our HRM team to kind of re-engage the design build consultant on that project to get the meetings scheduled, to get their staff kind of realigned to go to resume their work. Next slide, please. And so in the end of November, we looked at all of the design work that we had to do, including the Windsor Street Exchange, the North End feeder, and the Yonge Street route to the harbor. So we made a decision to package that and send that to the UARB. I know we went to the board as kind of an information report in the fall, just as information, but that is currently with the UARB now. They paused the review due to the decision of council on the 28th, but we've been working with the UARB just in the last couple of days to see if they can resume that review and resume that IR process, since we only did one round and we're likely to get a second round before we get their decision. Next slide, please. And just a little bit of an update on the construction. So the work is, the start of construction work is going to be probably to be determined, but it could start as early as probably late summer, early fall 2025, depending on how quickly the design can advance and how much early works is decided to be undertaken by the HRM team. We don't really know the exact location right yet because it's really depending on a decision point on the new bridge structure that's on the Highway 111 that is on the critical path of the project. Generally speaking, our Halifax Water infrastructure work, although it is important, it's not generally critical path to get the project to the substantial completion. However, something that is on the critical path is our UARB approvals, where we won't have a final decision on all of the scope of work that we'd like to do until we get the UARB's blessing to spend the money. So the overall completion, I know from my understanding of the current funding, is December 2028, or sorry, December 2027. That means that the improvements that the Transport Canada needs to see to grant that funding, those will be done by December, which meet that funding deadline, but that doesn't mean the entire project's going to be complete, which is likely going to slide into 2028. Next slide, please. So just some next steps that we're currently working on. So we're to you today to talk about this project and seek your approval. We're also working to restart that review of the design application with the UARB for about $4.5 million. Subject to approval, our next steps are to apply to the UARB for that construction funding to get that process started. We're going to continue to work on the design support and the scope of work development with our HRM team and their consultants. In the meantime, we haven't really stopped working on our pieces of the North End feeder replacement that are outside the scope of the project, the limits of the Windsor Street Exchange. We're continuing to work on concept design development and transitioning into detailed design for the North End feeder. There's a whole geotechnical program that we have to engage CN with, where we want to cross the tracks and get in onto the Portland. So we're in the preliminary stages of reaching out to them and figuring out what the easement or what their license agreements and access and all that fun stuff we have to deal with when it comes to CN. And we're also working through easements and property to get the corridor, the easements necessary to get the pipeline installed. And for Yonge Street, it's the same kind of flavor. It's most of that project is in the right of way, so there's not so much. There is a little bit of easements and property with a CN crossing, but that one, the concept design development, transitioning into detailed design. So that's kind of what we've been working on in the last few months in the areas outside of the Windsor Street Exchange. So and inside. So this slide here shows. I guess it's a summary of what our current ask is. And just kind of walk you through from left to right. So the first column would be what was included in previous capital budgets, so up to and including this one. The next column will be what we have currently included in our 25-26 budget for Windsor Street Exchange, the North End feeder, Yonge pocket projects. The next column would be a future budget requirements. So that's kind of what we're forecasting to. If you take all of these projects in their entirety from inside and outside of the Windsor Street Exchange, it's going to be up to an additional $98 million over the next, say, 5 years, if not more longer, to complete them. The one in gray is our current ask to the UARB for the design money, so you can see it tallies up to $4.5 million. The estimated construction cost, which is the light blue, so those column there is for each of those specific items, it's the cost of our work within the limits of the Windsor Street Exchange. So for example, the North End feeder replacement is 12.7, so that's the cost of putting that pipe within the limit of the Windsor Street Exchange. It doesn't include the cost of the pipe that's outside of that limit, which is kind of the next, which will be in the next, in the pink one. So when you look at what we're currently asking, which is kind of the green, it's the summation of the design fees, which we already have our approval into the UARB for, and the light blue, which is what's the cost of all the work within the limits of the Windsor Street Exchange. And when you get into the pink kind of colors, estimated cost of outside, so that's what we're going to need in the future to finish off these projects from, for example, it'll be on the Yonge Street, it'll be from Windsor Street all the way up to Yonge, and from Unkempt Road, from Windsor Street all the way up to Yonge. And for the north end feeder, it would be mainly from, for the Bedford Highway, across the Bedford Highway through the Portlands to the bottom of Bain Street. So that kind of gets us back into the limit. So that's the salmon color. So we tried to make it as simple as we could, but there's multiple different projects with multiple different budget lines, and it's over multiple different years. So hopefully we try to present it in a way that can be at least easily understood. We don't really, there's no real alternatives for the following reasons. So any delay of these projects impacts our ability to meet our IRP strategies. The North End feeder is part of a strategy for supplying of water for the Peninsula Halifax, which is a major growth area over the next 25 years. It's also an IRP strategy to separate the sewer in the Yonge Street pocket to accommodate future growth, future demand of wastewater generation, and kind of remove that stormwater flow from that. So those are the two strategies that it's really going to hinder our ability to meet those objectives if we don't move forward. Carrying out a standalone work in this area would be complex and more expensive when you compare it to integrating this work with HRM and our current partners. We gain the benefit of traffic control and mobilization and project overheads by integrating together. We're able to share those costs, and even reinstatement. There are some significant savings to hard surface reinstatements where we will share the cost 50-50 with our HRM partners, whereas if we were to do this project on our own, we paid everything on our own. And the impact to the public will be more significant if the work were to proceed as two separate projects. So you can just imagine we'd be in there for a couple of years putting these large diameter pipes and doing some improvements, and then shortly after that, then HRM would be back in there for another 3 or 4 more years to realign all the streets, and everybody would just be, why didn't we do all this at the same time? So those are kind of there's really no alternatives that we can suggest that are really desirable. I guess we see the value in integrating this work together with HRM. It just makes sense overall. So in short, the recommendation is that the Halifax Water Board approve the Windsor Street Exchange redevelopment project for a total cost of $69,275,000 and submission to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board, and subject to the Halifax Regional Council approval. And I think that's the last slide. So thank you. And if there's any questions, I guess I'll open it up to people.
So thanks, Jonathan. Just a couple clarifying points there before we jump into that. I want to thank Jonathan, but also Tom Gorman and Heather Miller played a significant role in this project. You saw the 3 parts that make up this larger project, and they, as well as their teams, played a significant role in what's behind this presentation. So I appreciate Jonathan presenting it and acknowledging that there's multiple people involved in this process as well. As you can see, it's very complex. It's a generational project that the city is going to see. The complexity, again, you saw it in the cost table itself, is the effort that we took to develop that table was significant, and it was aimed at our presentation to this group, but also to the UARB, and lining it up that we demonstrate clearly where the money's coming from, where we've planned it, and how the various projects, because we're combining 3 projects into one here, trying to demonstrate that as clearly as possible to hopefully make that process a little smoother. And that all came together through the work of that team. So one thing I would like to clarify that anybody that would have been involved in the HRM proceedings recently, there's been the tables that they would have shown at council referred to a $60 million number that was for Halifax Water. Today, you obviously are seeing a number that resembles 70. And the difference there is really we have additional design work and other incidental costs that are related to work outside of the Windsor Street HRM limits that made sense to take with this application as well. So when Jonathan talks about work outside of that HRM limit of construction, we have engagements currently with consultants to complete these projects in the future, and it just made sense to keep those consultants engaged through this application as well. So that's the difference between the line item you would have seen at the council report and that table versus the ask that's in front of you today. So I'll leave it at that, and if there's any questions, happy to field those between myself and Jonathan.
Thank you, Josh and Jonathan. Go ahead, Commissioner Cuddle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you for that presentation. And yeah, my first comment was going to be about that table. Like it really nicely lays out all the projects and the funding. And the only piece that was missing there is that you talked about multiple projects with multiple different years, and I was having a hard time understanding in that, is all that work happening at the same time, or is it happening over several years? And you know, are there dependencies there between one piece of work and another? And I'm sure this is something that yeah, you have probably in your brain and in the work that you're doing, but it would be nice to see that as well, so we can understand the interrelationships between this work or where it's independent. For the money, I did note that the 60 million versus the close to 70 million that's in the table. And we also, we throw around these large numbers, they're millions of dollars. And, we've said several times at council, and here we talk about the cost savings. And I'm wondering, what is the cost savings? And I understand the work efficiency, 100%. It's a comment I hear from residents all the time. How can we better align the work through different departments and agencies so we don't have to tear up the roads again and again? But I'm just wondering if there is an estimate of the cost savings of integrating all this work.
So I can start, excuse me, and if I miss anything, Jonathan, feel free to jump in. To your first question regarding the splits of the work, short answer is yes. We do have the plans for these overall projects that happen to intersect the limits of the Windsor Street project. These projects were always in Halifax Water's plan. Then along came, the hurry up of the Windsor Street came online, and that's when we started engaging with HRM. We do have pieces outside of that will need to be completed in order to meet the objectives of the IRP and the larger project. So that's the work that's the difference in the 60 to the 10 as far as design work that we're still engaged with our consultants on to make sure that that's ready to go outside of the limits following the Windsor Street project. And then I believe that the question around cost savings, it's a very good question. It's also a challenge. And the reality is if the Windsor Street project from HRM's perspective does not proceed, we are still planning to go ahead with the North End feeder and the Kemp Road sewer separation as separate projects as they were originally intended. The other piece of work is the fact that HRM through this project is basically realigning the whole intersection. With that provides the opportunity for us to look at what infrastructure should be replaced at that time. So it's a bit of we don't have that exact number and it's very difficult to get a number to say that you saved X millions of dollars by integrating. Because if the street alignment does not go ahead, there's a big chunk of those first 3 lines that are all incidental work related to the street work that do not happen at all. Do they happen in the future when the pipe fails or reach the end of its life? Yes. But so the overall dollar value, if HRM was not doing this project, at the bottom line may be less, but the incremental costs on the Kemp Road project and the North End feeder may be increased because of the lack of ability to share traffic control, to share reinstatement costs and that sort of thing. So it's almost an entirely different project approach if you're not integrating with HRM. And we've been down the path of the integration piece. So short answer is we don't have that number. We didn't take the design to that level of detail with the option considering HRM is not a partner. And it doesn't really answer the question, but it's a challenging number to demonstrate because it's such a different project if HRM is not involved.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Steele?
I have thank you. I have perhaps a less challenging question. It's really how long do we expect this infrastructure to last? I'm just curious. Kenda's earlier comment about intergenerational equity made me think about the length of it, how long investments last. And I know we don't really know either. It could fail, but perhaps you can give me some idea.
And maybe can you clarify, are you referring to the asset that we're trying to replace, or do you mean the new infrastructure that we're installing?
The new infrastructure. Sorry, I should have been clearer.
Oh, that's okay. Generally speaking, our pipes we consider asset lives on our pipes anywhere from 50 to 75, upwards of 100 years is typically, it depends on the type of pipe, the material, the size, and that's generally how we apply that life cycle to it. But you're absolutely right that the consideration for the disruption and the interchange at this point, it makes sense to go at the same time and have these pipes replaced. And that's really more those 3 first lines in that table. Those are existing pipes that are in the existing infrastructure today, and also a combination of based on what we need in the future to service that area. So that's the short answer, I guess, to your question.
Okay, thank you. No, that's very consistent with, I think, some of the discussion we heard when we had the Windsor Street Exchange discussion about the fact that we were investing in infrastructure that we expected to last for up to 75 years. So thank you.
And I just had one clarification as well. So you will be back to the Board of Commissioners again for the additional 40 million shown in the salmon column?
Yes, we're still working on the project, the delivery and the scheduling of that work outside of the limits is all going to depend on how the work inside the limits goes. So yes, we'll be returning, whether it's individually or as a package. That kind of still remains to be seen from what's more efficient to deliver the projects. But generally speaking, yes, that will be back before you.
Vice Chair Deagle-Gammon?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Josh, do you have, or Kenda, do you have any idea how long it's going to take to get a response back from the UARB board?
So we have the design application in front of them at the moment. The
Right.
intention is to restart that process. I guess not restart. We've already applied. We've received
Right.
1 round of IRs, and we've responded to those. And then
Right.
at that time, they paused. So I guess the design funding piece, my expectation is we may get another round of questions in response to our first. And then from there, typically, we may get a decision on the design is probably a month to 2 months is my best guess.
Right.
It's not up to me, obviously, but that's my best guess. The construction money is going to be a different
Yes.
different approach. It's a significant dollar value. And based on recent experience, I anticipate this may form some sort of paper hearing process. We'll get more information on that once we make our application, which would be in the very near term following this meeting and subsequent approval. But that process could be up to upwards of 4 or 5 months. It all depends on the approach and the hearing type that the board decides to take this matter through. But realistically, it's at least probably 2 months to 3 months going through the typical IR process, followed by any other requirements the board may have on their hearing process.
Is there, Madam Chair, may I ask one more question? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Is there any concern, or is there any interaction with the Joint Regional Transportation Authority, now called like Nova Scotia? Excuse me, is any of that going to impact what Halifax Water may or may not do in conjunction with the project with HRN?
Not to my knowledge. I'll let maybe Kenda, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, at this point, I think our touch points are back to the city, and our focus is integration with the municipality's project. And then if we're brought into any conversations with that provincial agency, we'll happily attend and participate. But right now, we just see our focus is on supporting this project through HRM's processes as well, and going down that path. So
great, thank you.
Commissioner Cuddle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had just one more question about the funding on this. It's another thing on the chart. Not that I want to make the chart any bigger than it already is, but funding sources for this work. So I know we're going to the UARB. I know that there's a significant cost here. Is this going to be solely funded through ratepayers, or do we have external funding for this? Is there opportunity to apply for further external funding to reduce the impact on ratepayers? How much of this is coming through Halifax Water, and how much of this is coming through other infrastructure funds?
Great question. So referring back to that table, the first 3 lines, I'm going to speak to the funding sources, and then we can get into the external funding options in a second. But the asset renewal piece, which is the bulk of the first 3 lines, including the 4th line as well, the north end feeder, is driven by asset renewal, which is typically recovered through debt depreciation of rates. And the bottom piece, the Kemp Road sewer separation, that project does have a RDC split to it, tied to growth, as the intention of that project is to provide room for growth within the system. So that bottom line of the 12 million will be funded through regional development charges, and subsequently the pink column to the right, the funding sources are the same for that column as well. At the moment, through the Windsor Street project, as mentioned at council, we're exploring the current CHIF funding, the Canadian Housing Infrastructure Fund, that's currently up for application. So we are exploring what ability we have to get funds through that program. We're working closely with municipal affairs as well as staff at the city, because of the various criteria that come with that funding program. And we just want to make sure that by accepting funds, how that's going to impact us from an RDC and from a ratepayer perspective. So we are actively engaged with the city on those applications. Those funds are essentially tied to enabling growth. So we're looking to clarify what that means from the federal program, and how the criteria and how strict that criteria will be. So Kenda, you can add anything if I missed that. You've been closer tied to CHIF, but that's my understanding.
No, you've pretty much captured it. It's an ongoing conversation, and we're looking for any opportunities that we can leverage off of any available funds.
I think the public would be interested in that as well. And just also noting the implications of the freeze on the regional development charges right now, what kind of impact that is having on our ability to have growth pay for growth when they're frozen in a time of great inflation and project cost increases. The hope is those freezes won't be there forever. But, it's another thing I might note on the SWOT analysis is that the freeze on the regional development charges does have implications for project funding and for ratepayers as well.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the way that the regional development charge is structured, and its intention is to fund growth-related projects independently of the rate base, so that the rate base isn't subsidizing growth projects. And so, yes, the charges are currently frozen, but we're comfortable right now in those financial reviews that the money is there to fund some of the near-term projects. And as we look at the update to the regional development charge, which is a near-term activity, we're looking at how do the freezes impact that fund, and making sure that is sustainable for the growth project component going forward. So,
all right, thank you for that answer.
Thank you, everyone. We have a motion on the floor.
Question?
Sure. I guess it's not loading on my screen, but can everybody see the motion? Call for the question. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. That was a very important decision as well as discussion. So thank you, everyone. That brings us to the end of today's agenda. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Yeah, all of it.
Oh, we'll give it to Commissioner Steele. Commissioner Steele has a motion to adjourn. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Have a good day.